So, hi everyone. So, in our last presentation session, we covered the two major steps of planning. There were mainly 7 steps with respect to planning. So, in our last presentation session, we covered the first 2 steps. What was the first step? Which is to establish goals. What are all the goals an organization needs to achieve, and also those goals needs to be verifiable. What do you mean by verifiable? The goals needs to be feasible enough. So you should always establish goals which can be implementable. They should not be impossible goals. That was the first step. We saw what is the process with respect to first step. Then we saw how to establish or how to identify planning premises. What do you mean by planning premises? These are all the information and facts you will be obtaining with respect to future. So once you obtain all the information and facts with respect to future, then you will be in a better position to make a better plan so that your goals and objectives can be implemented effectively and efficiently. So in this particular presentation session, we shall try to wrap up the remaining steps which are available with respect to steps of planning. As I had already told in my previous session, this particular question is very much important from exam point of view. Now we shall see the next step with respect to steps of planning, that is the third step, that is deciding the planning period. So once you have clearly identified the goals and also the planning premises, so you identify the goals and also you identified what are all the information and facts you need with respect to future so that your plan is successfully and prepared. You have made a better plan. So once you have identified your goals and planning premises, then you need to decide what will be the period of your plan. What will be the duration of your plan? Up to what time your plan will hold good. So that needs to be decided, because you can make plans for a year or you can also make plans for a decade. What do you mean by decade? 10 years. So you can make plans which can work for only 1 year, and also you can make plans which can work for close to 10 years. So you are making plans based on some logical information, based on some logical thinking, based on some future thinking, you are making a plan. So and also you are deciding the period of that particular plan based on that particular thinking. You are making a plan, you are having some information with respect to future, you are doing some logical thinking, then you are deciding this plan will hold good for 1 year. Similarly, you can decide this plan will hold good for 10 years. So in order to decide correctly on how much duration a particular plan will hold good, you can rely on these 3 main factors. So using these 3 main factors, you can decide what will be the duration of a particular plan. So the first factor is time, development and commercialization of a new product. So an organization has decided to start up a new product. So once an organization has decided to start up a new product, it has made a plan. Now the organization needs to decide what will be the duration of this particular plan. For that to happen, the organization can rely on the development time and the commercialization. What do you mean by commercialization? Getting the product into the market and successfully selling the product. That is called as commercialization. What is the development time and commercialization time needed for a new product? Based on that, you can decide for how much time a particular plan will still hold good. So you can use that particular factor. The second factor, you have made some investments. So you need to recover back those investments in terms of profits. So how much time is needed in order to recover the investment? Based on that, you can decide the duration of a plan. That is the second factor. The third factor, length of commitments. You have made some commitments with a contractor. You are in an organization. There are some contractors who work for you. They will make some projects, they will do some assignments for you. So between that particular contractor and an organization, there is a commitment. Based on the length of the commitment, whether the commitment is for 6 months, whether it is for 1 year, using that length of commitment as a factor, you can decide the duration of your plan. So these are all the 3 major factors you can consider whenever you are deciding the length of your planning period. So this is the third step with respect to steps of planning. First step, identifying goals, establishing the goals. Second step, establishing planning premises. Third step, deciding the planning period. For how long your plan is going to run. Based on what factors you can decide your planning period. The fourth step is finding alternate course of actions. So you have made a plan, you identified the goals, you have made a plan, you are in the right track, but now you lack some resources. So at that point you need to identify the alternate course of action available. Suppose there is a skilled person who is not available in an organization with respect to a particular technology. So you can hire a person from foreign countries, or you can send your organization personnel to the foreign country to get trained up. So this is how you are finding some alternate course of action in order to work with that new technology. So whenever there is a problem arising, you need to look for that particular alternate course of action. So once you have identified the alternate course of action, there can be many different alternate course of action. For example, I told you can send your organization personnel to a foreign country to get trained. There can be many countries which might offer that technology. Then you need to decide for which particular country you need to send the organization personnel. So you need to evaluate all the alternatives available and select the best alternative course of action. So this will be the fifth step in your planning. The sixth step is you are developing a derivative plan. What do you mean by derivative plan? I can say it is a smaller plan. Then what do you mean by larger plan? Obviously the plans which will be made by the top level management, that is called as larger plan. So those plans will be passed on to the lower part of the organization, lower levels of the organization. So those plans needs to be converted into day-to-day operation. Plans only just made without any implementation, there is of no use. Those plans needs to be converted to the day-to-day operations of an organization. So and also the middle level managers, once the top level managers have made the plan, your middle level managers should properly make the necessary programs and budgets in the current level, because those top level plan needs to be divided further into many middle level plans, many smaller plans. In order to implement those smaller plans, the middle level managers needs to make the proper programs to be implemented, the proper budgeting which has to happen at the middle level, or it might be at lower level also. Such process of making programs and budgets by your middle level managers is called as derivative plan. These programs and budgets can be called as derivative plan. So derivative plan are nothing but they are smaller plans, because once the plans is made at top level, they cannot be directly implemented at your lower level. You need to convert top level plans into some understandable smaller plans. So once they are converted into understandable smaller plans, your middle level manager will identify the programs needed, the budgets needed to achieve those smaller plans. Those programs and budgets needed to achieve the smaller plans are nothing but derivative plans. So this is the sixth step with respect to steps in planning. And the last step is, once you have made a plan, you cannot leave the plan alone. You should continuously measure and control the process. The process, what actually, how the planning process is going on. Overall getting involved in the planning process. What is the current stage we are in? Whether we are directed to the correct direction, whether we are in the right path to achieve our goals. All these things needs to be measured. Whether we are on time. ಈ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇಷ್ಟು ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತೀವಿ, ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಶೆಡ್ಯೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಇದೀವಾ. ಆಲ್ ದಿಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಮೆಜರ್ಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲ್ಡ್. ಸೊ ಯು ಶುಡ್ measure and control the planning process which is happening. So these are the 7 major steps any organization needs to follow whenever they are considering an activity called as planning. So in planning there are 7 major steps. So we discussed the 2 steps in our last presentation session. So in this particular presentation session we covered the remaining 5 steps. So these are all the things you need to remember with respect to steps of planning. So in our next presentation session we shall try to cover the last topic with respect to planning, that is limitations of planning. So whenever you are doing a planning activity, what are all the limitations you might face, what are all the problems you might face, that we are going to see in our next presentation session. Thank you.